I knew I shouldn't have come. But tradition, especially family tradition, has a way of pulling you back in even when you've spent years trying to forget what it took from you. Every summer, without fail, the Ramirez family booked a lavish resort for our annual bonding weekend. My mother, Angela, always said it was sacred. For me, it was just a ritual in endurance, 3 days of fake smiles, passive digs, and watching my golden siblings get paraded like trophies. This year, they picked the Palisade Bay Resort, a gleaming 5-star gem tucked between cliffs and seafoam. What no one in my family knew, though, was that I owned the place. 6 months earlier, my grandfather passed away. He left behind little in terms of affection, but a lot in terms of legacy. Turns out he'd quietly transferred ownership of the hotel to me in his will, not to my brother Daniel, the lawyer, not to Sophia, the investment banker. Me, Emma, the family's creative one. Translation, the one no one took seriously. I wasn't here to gloat. I wasn't even sure I was ready to be here. But something in me needed to see if things had changed. Spoiler, they hadn't. I stepped into the gleaming marble lobby just in time to hear my mother screech with joy as she hugged Sophia. "My star," she cried, clutching her like a long-lost war hero. Meanwhile, I stood there like a luggage cart someone forgot to push aside. Oh, Mom finally noticed me. Her voice dropped half an octave. "You actually showed up. Wouldn't miss it," I replied, forcing a smile so tight my jaw hurt. Next to her, Sophia's husband Marco looked me up and down like he was appraising discount art. "Graphic design still treating you?" "Okay," he smirked. I wanted to laugh. If only they knew. I built my agency from scratch. We were now contracted with 3 global tech firms and ran campaigns you've probably scrolled past on Instagram. But I never corrected them. Let them think I doodled stickers for Etsy. It made things easier. "Let's distribute the room keys," Mom announced, clapping her hands like a game show host. As expected, Sophia and Marco got the penthouse suite complete with a personal balcony and hot tub. My parents landed a deluxe suite with a sea view. Cousins and tag-alongs were sprinkled in junior suites. And Emma? Mom trailed off reading the last card, room 12. First floor, near the back entrance. There was a beat of silence. Room 12 was staff side. The kind of room they gave to last-minute guests or vendors. It was loud-faced the parking lot and smelled faintly of industrial detergent. I should know I'd stayed in it once before years ago when I came here with a college friend for spring break. We couldn't afford anything better. The resort manager, Louis, shot me a nervous glance. He knew. Of course he knew. I was his boss. But we had an agreement no one in my family was to know. "Is this a joke?" Louis asked, gently trying to offer me an out. "It's fine," I said, taking the key with a calm I didn't feel. "Room 12 will do just fine." As I walked away, I caught my cousin Mia whisper, "She always ends up with the leftovers." Room 12 hadn't changed. Same humming from the laundry room next door. Same scratchy sheets. Same sense of being just out of place enough to remind you don't belong. I sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. I wasn't here to make a scene. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here to see it for myself. To see if I really had been exaggerating all these years, or if the neglect, the constant second-place treatment, the subtle cuts were as sharp as I remembered. At dinner, things didn't improve. My seat at the resort's rooftop restaurant was wedged between a planter and a column. Out of sight, out of mind. Everyone else sat center stage, lit by golden lamps and cameras clicking for social media stories. I ordered a salad, not because I couldn't afford more, but because my appetite was crushed. "Emma, are you dieting again?" my father asked loudly. "I'm eating what I like," I said, keeping it simple. Marco chuckled. "Could have fooled me. I'd order more if I were you." "We're not splitting the bill." Sophia laughed, tossing her hair like this was some A-list comedy club. Just then, the executive chef approached our table. "Miss Emma," he said, bowing slightly. "Was your meal to your liking?" Everyone at the table froze. "You know the chef?" Sophia asked, startled. "We've crossed paths," I said lightly. He left. But the tone at the table shifted. Whispers. Glances. They wouldn't figure it out, not yet. Later that night, Luis caught me in the corridor. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "just not yet." The next morning, I walked into breakfast to find my mother already criticizing the fruit selection. Not ripe. I could have picked better at the corner market. When she saw my plate yogurt and fruit again, she sighed dramatically. "Is that all you're eating? You're going to fade away." "I'm fine, Mom." "You used to eat like a real person," Marco added, snorting. "Back when you didn't have to pay attention to price tags." This time I didn't respond. No point. Instead, I looked around. Staff members nodded at me discreetly. A server slipped me a note confirming that my requested files had been delivered to the private office. The plan was unfolding quietly, and still they didn't notice. Later, while my parents and Sophia enjoyed the spa's top-tier services, I walked to the old executive office, Grandpa's sanctuary, the one with the giant window overlooking the bay. Luis was waiting. "Everything's here," he said, gesturing to a leather box on the desk. Inside, letters, ledgers, and a manila folder marked "Confidential, Emma only." I opened it slowly. My mother's handwriting. Letters to Grandpa. Dozens of them. "Dad, I love you, but Emma doesn't belong in the business world. She's too sensitive, too scattered. Give Sophia a chance to lead. She's earned it." Another, "Emma wouldn't know how to run a lemonade stand, let alone a resort." I felt the sting behind my eyes. And then a note. Grandpa's reply written but never sent. "Angela, you've underestimated her all her life. Emma has the heart this place needs. One day she'll do more for this family than you'll ever admit." I closed the folder, heart thudding. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just poor seating charts and forgotten birthdays. My own mother had campaigned to erase me. Luis looked at me carefully. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." Because now I understood. They hadn't ignored me out of carelessness. They had done it on purpose. And they had no idea whose name was etched on the deeds of the place they were currently trashing with their entitled presence. By mid-morning, the resort was buzzing. Luggage carts zipped across polished tile, and sunlight bounced off the pool's surface like confetti. My family, of course, was already deep into their VIP spa experience, a gift I technically paid for. I wasn't invited. Instead, I stayed behind reviewing the documents Luis had pulled. What I found was worse than I expected. The letters from my mother weren't isolated. There were emails too, financial proposals, valuations, drafted sale agreements addressed to Grandpa, none of which I had ever seen. And the senders, my father and Marco. The two of them had tried to convince Grandpa to sell the resort at a family discount. Their offer undervalued the property by nearly half. They even included mock renovation plans and photoshopped projections, as if slick PowerPoint slides would blindside a man who'd built his empire without ever opening Excel. It didn't work. Grandpa declined, quietly, firmly. And 3 weeks later, he rewrote his will. That's when he named me. I sat back in the leather chair, the ocean in front of me through floor-to-ceiling glass. It was surreal. Everything around me had once been his, and now mine. But what was I supposed to do with it? Part of me wanted to stand on a table and shout, "Surprise, you're sitting in my lobby." But a louder part just wanted to understand. Why did they hate me so much? What had I ever done besides exist a little differently? A knock on the office door broke my spiral. Mia, my cousin. "Hey," she said, peeking in. "I thought this part of the hotel was off-limits." "Say, it is," I replied casually, stacking the folders. "Then how are you in here?" Luis, bless him, stepped in like it was rehearsed. "Miss Emma is helping with some feedback on our new branding initiative," he said smoothly. "She's actually a consultant." "Consultant." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You never said you worked here." "I don't," I said evenly. "Not really." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't believe me, not fully, but she didn't press either. She just looked around the room, the corner desk, the antique compass on the shelf, the family photos, and said, "Grandpa used to bring me here when I was little. He always locked the door when we left." I nodded, letting the silence do the rest. After she left, I stood alone again in the room that held more truth than any family dinner ever had. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just whispered, "Thanks, Grandpa, for seeing me." That evening, the family gathered for cocktails at the Cliffside Lounge. I arrived late again, intentionally. My mom hated tardiness, especially from me. "Nice of you to join us," she said with a tight smile. "I wouldn't miss the family toast," I replied. Marco was already on his second drink. "Did you hear?" he announced loudly. "Sophia just closed a deal with that fintech company. It's going to make her department one of the top performers this quarter." Of course she had. Everyone clinked glasses, showering her with compliments. My dad gave her a speech. Someone even suggested renaming a family scholarship fund after her. I sat in silence, sipping ginger ale and watching the sky darken over the water. And then, in the middle of her acceptance nods, Sophia turned to me. "What's new with you, Emma?" she asked sweetly, like a teacher addressing the quiet kid in class. "I'm managing a few projects," I said. "It's been a busy quarter." What kind of projects she pushed? A few international campaigns? Some hospitality work? Marco snorted. Like hotel flyers, that sort of thing. I smiled, sort of. They laughed. Even my aunt, who always tried to stay neutral, looked away awkwardly. It stung, more than it should have. But not enough to make me break. Not yet. After dinner, I slipped away while they were still comparing property portfolios. Luis met me in the hallway with a quiet nod. "The letter you asked about your grandfather's final directive, it's in the vault. You want to see it?" "Not yet," I whispered. "Tomorrow." The next morning I woke early. The hallway outside room 12 was quiet, except for the hum of a housekeeping cart and the faint thump of dryers spinning nearby. I dressed in a navy blouse and white linen pants, calm colors, clean lines, and walked the long corridor to the conference suite. I had something to prepare. Downstairs in the private lounge, I found my mother sipping espresso, flipping through a guest magazine like she owned the place. "You're up early," she commented without looking up. "I had a meeting," I said. "A meeting?" She chuckled. "With who? The pool boys?" I didn't answer. She looked up finally. "You know, if you ever wanted real help, connections, clients, I could talk to Sophia. She has contacts in marketing." I tilted my head slightly. "I appreciate the offer." Her face softened for half a second, maybe believing she'd scored a point. Then she added, "It's not your fault, you know. Not everyone's cut out for success." It took everything in me not to laugh. Instead, I just nodded. "I guess we'll see." Later that day, while my family boarded a luxury catamaran tour, courtesy of the resort, I returned to Grandpa's office. Luis was waiting holding a thick envelope. It was dated 5 days before his death. Inside, a handwritten letter and a sealed document with the words, "For the family, at Emma's discretion." The letter was short. No long goodbyes, no warm reminiscing. Just clarity. "Emma, they'll never see you coming. That's your strength. Lead with grace. Strike only with truth. This hotel is yours. But your peace is what matters more. Love, J.E." I folded the letter and tucked it into my bag. Then I looked at Luis. "Can we set up the main conference room for tomorrow morning?" He nodded. "Under what name?" I smiled. "Let's keep it casual. Just Emma's presentation." The timing felt right. They'd had their fun, their yacht ride, their bragging brunches. Now it was my turn. But not for revenge. For resolution. There's a certain calm that comes with clarity. The morning of the presentation, I felt it for the first time in years. No nerves, no resentment, just a quiet knowing. I wasn't out for blood, I wasn't plotting some reality TV-style ambush. I just needed them to see the truth, to hear what had been hiding under their assumptions for decades. The conference room sat on the top floor. It was glass-walled, sunlit, designed for power plays and mergers. I arrived early in an ash-gray blazer over a sleeveless silk blouse, understated, clean, like a whisper that could silence a scream. Luis had handled the setup. Rows of chairs faced the screen, water bottles on each table, neatly printed agendas under each nameplate, all titled Emma's Briefing. When the elevator dinged and the doors slid open, it started. First came my dad. Then Sophia, arms crossed her brows, already lifting in suspicion. Marco trailed behind her, still chewing something and making zero effort to hide his boredom. Then the cousins. Then my aunt and uncle. Finally, fashionably late, of course, my mother. "What exactly is this?" she asked the moment she walked in. "A branding pitch?" "No," I said calmly, gesturing for everyone to sit. "This is about the resort, and Grandpa, and a few things I think you should know." Silence settled over the room like a curtain being drawn. I opened with photos. Old ones, black and white shots of Grandpa in the early days on ladders laying tile with his own hands standing outside a makeshift reception desk that was barely more than a plywood table. He built this place from nothing, I began, and he protected it fiercely. But what he really wanted was to pass it on to someone who understood its worth not just financially but emotionally. I moved to the next slide, a scanned letter from Grandpa's handwriting. The one dated 5 days before he died. I didn't read it aloud. I just let the words speak for themselves on the screen. My mother stiffened when she saw her name in the first paragraph, and then softly I continued. For a long time, I didn't understand why he chose me. I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe he just felt sorry for me. But then I found the documents. I walked around the table, dropping copies of the attempted buyout between my father Marco and Grandpa. Draft contracts, inflated promises, handwritten notes from Grandpa correcting their math. Sophia paled. Marco's smirk evaporated. "This," my father began reaching for the papers. "This is old business. It never went anywhere." "Because he stopped it," I replied. "Because he knew exactly what you were doing." My voice didn't rise. I didn't yell or accuse. I let the silence fill in what my words didn't. Wait, Mia said, looking around. Are you saying you own the hotel? I nodded. I've been the sole owner for 6 months. Chairs scraped against the polished floor. Someone gasped. Maybe my uncle. You've been staying in room 12 and letting us walk around like we… My mom's voice broke off confusion, giving way to disbelief. Why? I needed to know, I said. If things were ever going to be different. If anyone saw me for who I am, not who they decided I was 20 years ago. She didn't answer. No one did. I took a breath and pulled out the last document. This, I said, holding up the envelope, was Grandpa's final request. A letter addressed to all of you. He asked that I wait 6 months before sharing it. Louise stepped forward and handed out copies. I let them read in silence. Their eyes scanned the words, some fast, some slow. My father's mouth tightened into a line. My aunt pressed a hand to her chest. Sophia kept rereading one paragraph like it might change if she blinked enough. Yeah. And my mother didn't read. She just stared at the paper like it had slapped her. He loved you, I said softly. All of you. But he didn't like what this family became. Still, no one spoke. The weight of the letter hung over them heavier than any insult I could have thrown. He trusted me to carry on his legacy. I continued. Not because I was loud or successful in the way this family defines it, but because I cared, because I listened. And what now? My father asked, his voice rough. What do you want from us? Nothing, I replied. This wasn't about payback. This was about the truth. About letting go of the narrative you all built around me without ever asking who I really was. There was a long pause. The kind that only follows a lifetime of silence. Then Mia, of all people, spoke. I don't know what to say, she said quietly. But I think I owe you an apology. She looked around. Maybe we all do. I didn't answer. I wasn't there to be apologized to. I just wanted the truth in the room. Even if it sat there quietly. Even if they didn't know what to do with it. After everyone left, my mother stayed behind. She stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself like she was bracing against cold that wasn't there. I read the letter, she said. I waited. I thought he was punishing me. For not being like him. For not being you. She turned to face me. Her expression, raw, unfamiliar, caught me off guard. When I saw how much he adored you, I felt like I disappeared. That admission hit harder than I expected. Because for a moment, I wasn't standing across from the woman who had belittled my dreams for decades. I was standing across from a daughter who had never felt seen by her father. I guess we both felt invisible, I said. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Emma. I don't know how to fix it, but I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Maybe the first honest thing between us in years. I don't want you to fix it, I said. Just don't deny it happened. She swallowed hard, then walked past me, brushing my arm lightly. I always thought you were quiet because you were weak, she whispered. Now I know you were just stronger than the rest of us. That night I returned to room 12 one last time. I stood at the door for a moment before unlocking it. Same soft hum. Same scent of detergent. Same walls that once felt like a cage. I walked in, sat on the bed, and exhaled. Then I opened my bag, pulled out Grandpa's letter to me, and read it again, this time aloud like a vow. Lead with grace. Strike only with truth. He knew. Somehow he always knew I'd need those words more than anyone else. And now, I did. The day after the letter reading, the hotel felt quieter. Not emptier, just different. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm when the air feels cleared, but the ground's still wet. You walk softer, not out of fear, but out of respect for what just happened. Breakfast was subdued. No flashy outfit reveals. No bragging about client dinners or travel upgrades. Just toast, coffee, and a few sideways glances. They weren't sure what to make of me now. And for once, that was their problem, not mine. I sat at the end of the long table again, but this time by choice. Luis walked over to check on us, refilling mugs. He didn't say much, just looked at me with the kind of respect that doesn't need explaining. You staying in room 12 again tonight? He asked, voice low. I smiled. No, I think it's time I moved upstairs. The suite Grandpa once used had been kept mostly untouched. Rich wood paneling, a bookshelf full of old navigation books, a framed compass on the wall, the kind of room that made you speak softer just by stepping inside. Luis personally oversaw the move. It was symbolic more than anything, carrying my suitcase from one floor to another, but it felt right. Like moving out of a memory that no longer defined me. As I unpacked, I found a small box tucked inside the closet shelf. It was labeled with my name in Grandpa's handwriting. Inside, a sketch pad. Old, edges frayed, and inside the pages my childhood drawings. He'd kept them. A crayon sun, a stick figure hotel, a note scrawled in crooked letters. Someday I will make a place where everyone feels seen. I didn't even remember writing that, but he had remembered. He had saved it. My throat tightened. Not because I was sad, but because sometimes love doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits. Quiet and loyal. Like roots underground holding you steady even when you can't see them. Later that afternoon, I joined my family by the pool. Not in a dramatic entrance kind of way, just casually like any other guest. Sophia looked up from her lounger. She was wearing sunglasses, but I could still feel the way her eyes followed me. "You settled into your new room?" she asked, tone half neutral, half prickled. "I did. Nice view up there," she added. "I guess it suits the owner." There it was, the shift. She wasn't dismissing me anymore. She was adjusting. "I always liked the view," I replied. Even from room 12, Marco looked like he wanted to say something but wisely chose not to. My father was reading the newspaper but hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. When I sat nearby, he cleared his throat. "You know, he started your grandfather, and I had different visions for this place. That's putting it mildly." He nodded once. "Still, he believed in you. More than I ever did." I see that now. It was the closest thing to an apology I would probably ever get from him. And for once, that was enough. That night during dinner on the terrace, I stood up before dessert was served. "I have something to share," I said. The silverware clinked quietly back onto plates. "No surprises," Marco muttered under his breath, but no one echoed him this time. "I know this weekend hasn't been easy, for any of us, but it's been necessary. And I think Grandpa planned it that way." I glanced around the table. My mother looked down at her folded hands. Sophia stared directly at me. Mia offered a faint smile. "This hotel isn't just a business. Not to me. And I don't think it was to him either. It was a place where he could give people dignity, where names and rooms and titles didn't matter as much as how you made people feel." I paused. That's what I want it to keep being. I reached into my bag and pulled out a smaller stack of folders, but I don't want to carry it alone. That got their attention. "These," I said, placing the folders in front of them, "are proposals. Opportunities for you to contribute not just financially, but meaningfully." Marco opened his and immediately began scanning. "Are these program drafts?" I nodded. "Community outreach, educational workshops, sustainability programs, ways to rebuild not just the image of the hotel but what it stands for." "And what's the catch?" Sophia asked, wary. "No catch," I said, "but there is one condition." I looked at each of them in turn. "You don't get to dictate direction. You only get to contribute if you're here for what the hotel means, not just what it earns." My father leaned back in his chair. "You're offering us a stake." "I'm offering a stake in something better than that. Legacy. If you want to be part of that, you'll have to earn it." My mother blinked. "What if we say no?" I shrugged. "Then nothing changes. The hotel stays mine. And I keep building what Grandpa envisioned. But I'd rather not do it alone. Not if there's a chance we can fix what's broken." After dinner, Sophia approached me near the edge of the terrace where the ocean's roar softened into rhythm. "You meant what you said. Every word." She looked out at the horizon. "I don't know if I ever really saw you until this week." I smiled faintly. "You weren't supposed to. That's how the family worked." She nodded. "Maybe it's time we stopped letting it." I didn't say anything. Neither did she. But sometimes, silence is a treaty, a start. That night, I stood on the balcony of the suite, wind teasing loose strands of my hair. Below me, the hotel lights glowed like anchored stars. Inside the place buzzed quietly guests finishing dinner, staff changing shifts, dishes being stacked, and stories being told in hushed Spanish behind the kitchen doors. I used to think I had to choose between revenge and peace. But peace doesn't mean forgetting. It just means not dragging your pain into every room you walk into. Some things were still raw. Some people hadn't said sorry. Some probably never would. But for once, that didn't define me. The woman who checked into room 12 hadn't needed the penthouse to feel like she mattered. But the woman in this suite, she didn't need their permission anymore to take up space. She was done being the family shadow. She was done waiting to be seen. She had made her own light. You'd think after all that, after the letters, the meeting, the truth, things would fall into place. They didn't. Things didn't fall. They shifted. And slowly. My family didn't suddenly turn into a Hallmark commercial. Nobody brought out guitars or passed around apology cards. But what changed was quieter eye contact, held longer voices, dropped softer, less edge in each word. And that was a start. The next morning, I walked the halls of the hotel not as the forgotten guest, but as its anchor. Luis introduced me to 3 new staff members in the break room. They looked a little confused when I shook each of their hands. I guess they were used to owners hiding behind tinted glass and quarterly memos. "Tell me what's not working," I asked. They stared at me for a moment like I'd spoken in code. Finally, a young server named Mateo said, "The night shift laundry team's been short 2 people all month." "I'll fix it," I replied, and I meant it. When I left the room, Luis was grinning. "That's what your grandfather used to say," he told me. "If the back door's broken, fix the damn door. Don't schedule a meeting about it." Later that afternoon, my cousin Mia caught up with me in the lobby. "I've been thinking," she said. "About what you said at dinner." I raised an eyebrow. "About building something better," she added. "I teach part-time graphic design, believe it or not, and I know a few students who'd kill for internships at a place like this." That surprised me. Mia had always played both sides soft-spoken, but never too far from the louder voices. But something had clearly landed. "Send me their portfolios," I said. "We'll find spots for the ones who deserve it." Her face brightened. "You mean it?" "I don't say things I don't mean." She laughed a little. "Yeah, I'm starting to get that." It was small, but it was a seed. The biggest change came from someone I didn't expect: my father. That evening, he knocked on the door of my suite. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. He stood in the hallway like a man asking permission to enter a place that once belonged to him. Funny how roles can reverse just like that. "I wanted to show you something," he said. He held out a folder. "Legal documents, financial records, and a personal letter. I've transferred the remainder of the family trust shares, those tied to the hotel, into your name. No loopholes, no contingencies." I blinked. Why? Because holding on to control after losing integrity is cowardice. It took me a moment to realize what he was doing. He wasn't just handing over papers. He was handing over power, without pretending it was a favor. I opened the letter. It wasn't long, but it was personal. "I misjudged you because I didn't understand you. I fought for the kind of success I could measure. You built the kind I never learned to see. I hope someday I earn the chance to follow your lead." No signatures, no flourish, just his handwriting and a quiet kind of remorse. "You wrote this?" I asked. He nodded. "Yesterday, after the meeting. For the first time in my life, I saw my father not as an obstacle, but as a man trying to unlearn what the world had trained into him. And maybe that was the biggest shift of all." By the next day, word had spread. Not about the inheritance or the documents, but about the new programs. Luis told me that 3 staff members came to him with ideas for community engagement, beach cleanups, career mentoring, even language exchange nights with local students. One chef offered to teach kids how to cook simple meals. A housekeeper suggested a second-hand uniform drive for single mothers returning to work. These weren't just ideas. They were proof that the hotel, this family-shaped building, could stand for something more than image or legacy. It could stand for dignity, for roots that nourished, not just held things down. The final dinner of the reunion weekend arrived faster than I expected. It was held on the back terrace beneath hanging lanterns that swayed like they were dancing with the wind. The table was longer than usual, and this time my seat was in the center. Not because I demanded it, but because no one questioned it. Even Marco for once kept his mouth shut. As dessert was served, Sophia tapped her glass. Everyone turned. A hush fell. "I want to say something," she said. I braced myself. I knew that tone. Polished, intentional. But what came next surprised me. "I used to think leadership was about control," she began, "that the loudest voice in the room won." She looked at me. But watching Emma this weekend reminded me that real leadership is quiet. It doesn't demand. It just creates space for others to step into their better selves. She raised her glass to the quietest one in the room, and the one we finally learned to hear. The family followed one by one, some slower than others, but eventually every glass lifted. And for once, I didn't feel like I was being honored out of guilt or obligation. I felt understood. Later that night, I walked through the garden Grandpa had planted when the hotel first opened. Most people didn't even know it existed. It was tucked behind the east wing where the kitchen staff used to grow herbs for the restaurant. It was overgrown now, but still alive, kind of like me. I knelt next to an old rosemary bush and smiled. The scent clung to my fingers. Memory is funny that way, how it sneaks up through your senses instead of your mind. Grandpa used to say, anything that grows roots will come back, no matter how long it's been forgotten. I stood brushing my hands off and looked up at the stars. Some things take time. Some truths take silence. And some families only find each other again when they stop trying to win and start trying to listen. That's what this place was always meant to be. not a monument to wealth, a space to remember what matters. 1 year later, the resort looks different, not in the grand ways people usually expect. The lobby marble still gleams, the ocean still hums, and the balconies still catch every last drop of sunset. But beneath the surface, something's shifted. It breathes now. It listens. And it welcomes people the way Grandpa always said it should, with dignity, not just hospitality. Room 12 is no longer a guest room. It's a story. We turned it into a small memory space, part archive, part tribute. On the walls hang photos of the hotel's early days, old reservation books, handwritten menus. And in the center sits Grandpa's chair and my childhood sketchbook open to the page with the stick figure drawing, and that line I wrote so long ago. Someday, I will make a place where everyone feels seen. Some guests pause longer than others when they read that line. Some even cry, not because it's poetic, but because sometimes we forget what a simple truth can hold. My relationship with my family is real now. Not perfect, not forced, real. My mother and I meet for tea on Tuesdays. We don't pretend we're something we never were. But there's a softness now. She asks questions she never used to. About my work, about the guests, about me. She still hesitates sometimes, like she's scared of saying the wrong thing. But she shows up. And that counts. My father, strange as it still feels, joined the hotel's mentorship program. He teaches financial literacy to young adults from the nearby town. His voice has changed, less polished, more patient. He says working with people who remind him of his younger self has made him reconsider who he really was all along. He told me once, "I wish I'd been raised by someone like you." I didn't know what to say to that. Maybe I still don't. Sophia surprisingly took the longest to thaw. But she did. A few months ago, she invited me to speak at one of her firm's leadership panels. Not as a gesture, not as charity, as a peer. And after the event, she hugged me, not tight, not dramatic, but real. "I see it now," she whispered. And that was enough. Marco and I never got close. He still keeps his distance, and I let him. Some people aren't meant to come full circle. Some lessons arrive just to be noticed, not to be repeated. And honestly, that's peace too. Mia, though, flourished. She helped me launch the hotel's creative youth program, offering paid internships to local students in hospitality design and marketing. The program's in its second round now, and 2 interns from the first batch just got full-time jobs. She says it's the most meaningful work she's ever done. I believe her. She glows when she's around them. That glow. It used to belong to Grandpa. Now it lives in us. As for me, I live here now. Not just physically, fully. I still run my agency, but from a small office overlooking the sea. My team works remotely, spread across time zones and continents. We design for nonprofits, ethical brands, and startups with hearts bigger than their logos. We turn down more work than we accept, and that's exactly how I want it. I make space now. For myself. For the people who need it. For the things that grow slower but root deeper. Every morning I walk the grounds barefoot. A habit I picked up from Grandpa. He used to say the ground tells you things shoes don't. He wasn't wrong. Sometimes I sit on the old garden bench and watch guests pass by. Some are young families, some retired couples, some solo travelers trying to remember who they are. And I think this is what he meant. Not a hotel, a place that holds people. We started a new annual tradition too. No more family reunions built on guilt or forced smiles. Instead, we host an open table every summer called the Story Feast. Everyone brings one dish and one story. Guests, staff, family, no titles, no hierarchies. Last year, a dishwasher named Rosa shared her story about escaping a violent home and finding safety in the hotel's employee housing. Sophia cried. Marco left early, but most stayed. We lit candles, told the truth, and remembered that sometimes the most powerful legacy is one shared around food and forgiveness. Last week, a guest checked in alone. A woman in her 60s with kind eyes and tired shoulders. She stood at the front desk and whispered, "I just need a place to feel safe." Luis put her in room 203, Ocean View Sunrise side. He told her, "You're not just safe, you're seen." And when he said it, I felt it in my bones. Because that's what we built here. Not a revenge tale, not a triumph parade, but a living space for healing. People still ask me if I ever told the full story online. The inheritance, the family drama, the Room 12 twist. I didn't. Not because it's a secret, but because it was never really about the twist. It was about the quiet, the room no one wanted, the girl no one saw, and how both became the center without ever raising their voice. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't strike back. It's stand still, hold the truth, and let it speak for itself. Tonight the sky is velvet. I'm on the terrace again, barefoot with a mug of chamomile and the sound of the sea below. I look around this place not as something I won or conquered, but as something I finally understood. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you live into. And as the wind picks up and the lanterns sway, I hear Grandpa again. Not in words, but in stillness. And it sounds a lot like home. Story 2. My family mocked my tech job at Christmas. Then I showed them the home I bought in cash. Except for me, everyone got gifts. Mom chuckled. I see now that we neglected to give you yours. Did they think I would cry? I grinned. It's all right. I gave myself this. When they saw it, the room became quiet. Leah Kim is my name. My age is 31. And I didn't look back when I left Seattle 5 years ago. I was a back-end developer for a cybersecurity firm that had contracts with government organizations and big banks. I wasn't only skilled at my job, I was essential. I found solutions to issues that other teams were unable to even articulate. For my family, at least, it seemed as though I didn't exist outside of work. Since 2016, we hadn't communicated. So I was shocked to discover my cousin Rachel's name when my phone vibrated on a calm Wednesday in October 2023. The only person with my new number was her. Leah. Softly, she said, "Your folks are attempting to get in touch with you. They want you to spend Christmas at home." I sat gently in my tiny Brooklyn apartment on the edge of the bed. "After all these years, they've been inquiring about you," I said. "Oh," Rachel said. This time they appear to be sincere. After hanging up, I looked at the wall. It had been months since I had given my family any thought. Years, in fact, yet the memories returned in a flash. I was never the favorite, and was always the odd one out. When I was 13, I recalled sitting in a chilly office chair with my knees to my chest, while my childhood psychologist, Dr. Patel, informed my parents that Leah's issues were obviously not caused by her loneliness. Ignorance is the source of them. My mom laughed. Every one of our kids is equally loved by us. I knew it was a lie, though. Dylan, my older brother, was the endearing football team captain. The Golden Lad is the president of the student council. When he reached 16, they gave him a vehicle. A worn sweater that still had someone else's scent to it was given to me. Dylan's presents shone under the tree even on Christmas. Mine appeared to have been purchased at the last minute, but I had no idea who I had become when they eventually called me back this year. Family get-togethers had never been pleasant. Dylan took center stage, charismatic, out loud, charming. Like any other piece of furniture, I vanished into the background. Nobody took attention. That's when I learned to program. An outdated flyer that was posted on the school bulletin board was the beginning of it all. Thursdays after school in room 207, an introduction to computing club. After going once, I never missed it again. Something seemed to understand me for the first time. People weren't involved. It was the code's reasoning. My haven was the club. We used components from the garbage to fix outdated machines. We remained up late discussing compilers, exchanging books, and assisting one another with issues. I even used a borrowed laptop to create my first game. One day, Mr. Alvarez pulled me aside. "Leah, you possess a unique skill," he informed me. "Don't allow someone to diminish you." I had a plan at the age of 17. I left Seattle, applied to institutions, and made the decision to start again in my future. Naturally, Dylan was already enrolled in a prestigious California university, supported financially by all of my parents. The graduation supper followed. To Dylan, my father held up his glass. "You have my admiration at Stanford." Everyone raised a toast. My mother then added, "We're also urging Leah to seek steady employment." "We need dishwashers at the restaurant," my uncle joked. And everyone at the table, including my parents, started laughing. I didn't chuckle. They were unaware that I had already been admitted to a prestigious technological school in New York on a full scholarship. Covered were accommodation, tuition, and even a stipend. I relocated to a Manhattan dorm after packing discreetly. Before the ink was dry on my graduation, I obtained my ideal job at a cybersecurity company, worked part-time as a waitress, and graduated with honors. I oversaw a multi-million-dollar integration for a multinational bank 4 years later. The incentive was sufficient to purchase real estate. I thus gave a real estate agent a call. I discovered the ideal apartment in Fort Greene within a few days. Modern kitchen, exposed brick, 2 bedrooms next to the park. I was officially a house owner at the age of 31. I had a little celebration 2 weeks before to Christmas. Only my real pals. They witnessed me staying up late, crying over coding mistakes, and continuing on. We laughed a lot while eating Thai cuisine and inexpensive wine while sitting on cushions on the floor and surrounded by unopened boxes. To Leah, Lisa held out her glass. "The quiet one who made silence into power," she added. We exchanged toasts. I grinned, but I couldn't get the notion out of my head. I would be returning home in a week. However, I wasn't going back as the invisible girl this time. I was returning this time as someone who valued her. I took a few days off from work the week before Christmas. I made the 6-hour drive to my former North Seattle neighborhood and packed little but heartfelt presents. The house had a porch light that flickered like a dying memory, untrimmed shrubs, and old, well-fading paint. My hands were shaking when I rang the doorbell. There were footsteps and a creak when the door opened. "Leah." Mom blinked. "Whoa, that's you." She hugged me tensely for a moment. "On the inside, you appear different." I caught the fragrance. Stale air, old wood, and that never-ending dish of dry potpourri. The living room was packed. When everyone turned to stare at me, the conversation ceased. "Look who made the decision to attend. Someone is wearing fancy pants," someone said. Another voice whispered. I glanced down. A designer coat and well-cut black jeans. Silent luxury. This crowd obviously doesn't understand. Then Dylan smiled as he emerged from the kitchen. He pointed to her tummy and said, "This is my wife, Mia. Your niece or nephew in the future." "Congratulations," I said. He grinned smugly. "Your PC is still stuck in a corner." There was instant laughing. I saw my jaw getting tense. "I'm an IT worker." Calmly, I answered. "If you've ever come home stronger than they thought you were, sign up for the next time." Everything changes in this narrative toward the end. Tech, Dylan scoffed, such as responding to support calls or repairing printers. He looked around at the others. Leah was always the odd one, you see. She most likely operates from a dimly lit basement. I hardly grinned. That kind of thing. Mom gave a hand clap. "Dinner will be ready shortly." Leah. "Get out of here. You'll sleep on the sofa because Dylan now uses your room as an office." Naturally. The night was obviously a creeping rain of disdain. I was cornered by Aunt Nora's weak blow. "Your brother will start his own company. His vision is incredible. And you continue to use that computer I created software." I answered. Her nose furrowed. "Well, the tedious tasks must be completed by someone." As they prepared dinner, Uncle Mike leaned forward. "The dishwashing position at the restaurant is still available. Although it's minimum wage, the labor is honest." "Thank you," I said courteously. "I'm all right." I was placed at the end of the table next to the kitchen entrance for supper. Dylan took over the conversation as usual. "This will completely transform the market," he said. "All we need to get started is the first investment." "What is the amount that you require?" Dad inquired. "To begin, about $150,000. Dylan sent me a stern look in response. "The danger is worth the large sum of money." My father nodded as though he were hearing Einstein himself explain the theory of relativity. I bet my bottom lip that I won't laugh. "We can definitely figure something out. We could mortgage the house according to my father." "Son, you've always had our faith." A lump formed in my throat. I recalled the day I requested $500 for a course on advanced programming. "Money doesn't grow on trees," they informed me. Aunt Carmen lifted her glass to the family's future businessman. Everyone gave a hearty toast. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room to exchange gifts, but nobody paid any attention to me. I crept into the kitchen. I required a respite. I pulled out my phone to look at my emails. I had to pay heed to 3 security alarms. I was able to resolve everything remotely. My mom entered while carrying a pile of soiled dishes. "Do you believe you could lend a hand a little?" In that tone she spoke. I was really familiar. I said, "Of course," and put my phone aside. As she opened the dishwasher, she said, "You ought to be out there socializing thing. You're hiding in the kitchen after being missing for years." Silently, I began washing the dishes. I considered telling her that I wasn't hiding, but I decided to take a break from the barrage of patronizing remarks. However, I knew it was pointless. So after a time she inquired, "How are you actually doing?" "You reside in New York," Rachel remarked. "I'm doing fine. I said sardonically. Are you still using those computers? Yes, Mother. I continue to use computers in my profession. She let out a sigh as though I had verified a family tragedy. I guess at least you have a steady job. Just then, Dylan came into the kitchen carrying a bottle of empty wine. He didn't even glance at me before leaving it on the counter. We're opening the presents, Mom. Everybody is waiting. She dried her hands right away. Naturally. Sweetheart? She continued, Leah, finish the dishes and come when you can, as if recalling my presence. As they departed together, I observed them discussing excitedly the most recent present Dylan had purchased for Mia. I felt something shatter inside. The slights weren't the same. It was the sour realization that in spite of the years, they had not really changed. The invisible girl was still me. I walked slowly to the living room after doing the dishes. There were shiny ribbons and shredded wrapping paper all around, and everyone was seated in a circle. Dylan had given my father a brand new sweater which he was wearing. My mom was looking at a necklace that hung around her neck. With smiles of satisfaction, the aunts and uncles were trading cards. I stood in the doorway watching the scene of the family that had always made me feel alienated. Beside my suitcase, the little bag containing the presents I had brought was still unopened. Dylan gave me a smug smile when he saw me. We're almost done, Aaliyah. After all this time, did you bring anything for the family? Everyone's eyes were on me. Lost. I could feel my neck getting redder. Indeed, I replied as I walked over to grab my bag. I had a few items with me. I started giving out my presents, a book on the history of navigation for Dad and a cashmere scarf for Mom. A tea set for Aunt Carmen. Dylan and other things are his only passions. Dylan and Mia received thoughtfully selected small gifts. For the baby, I had brought a homemade musical mobile. My mother, looking at the scarf as confusedly as if it were an alien object, said, "Thank you." Aunt Nora said softly, "It looks expensive," as she touched the fabric. I said it was nothing. Dylan gazed at the phone, perplexed after unwrapping it. It is handcrafted from an artist collective in Brooklyn. However, it was created by kids in a workshop, I clarified. Every item is handcrafted by hand. He laughed with a nasal tone. Yes, very New York. We prefer practical things. Right, Mia? His wife nodded automatically, though I could see her eyes lingering on the carved pieces of the mobile with genuine interest. Well, my father said, checking his watch. I think we're done with the gifts. Except for me, everyone got gifts. Mom chuckled. I see now that we neglected to give you yours. Did they think I would cry? I grinned. It's all right, I gave myself this. I said, bringing out my phone. I opened an app and displayed photographs of my place in Fort Greene. When they saw it, the room became quiet. That's yours? My mother questioned, leaning forward to see better. Yes, I bought it 3 months ago. I answered naturally, swiping to reveal more photographs. 2 bedrooms, refurbished kitchen near the park. Dylan gave out a strained laugh. You must have a mountain of debt. Not at all, I answered. I paid cash for the majority of it. For an integration project I oversaw last year, the firm awarded me a sizable bonus. Extra. My dad scowled as though he had never heard the phrase before. What sort of integration? I was taken aback by Uncle Mike's sincere curiosity. Banking security, I said. I created an authentication mechanism that many global banks currently employ. There was an awkward stillness in the room. I could see the bewildered looks, the baffled expressions, and the overall confusion. But all of a sudden, another voice spoke. The youngest of my mother's sisters, my Aunt Carmen, was always a little outcast. Are you employed by a bank? She inquired. Not exactly, I said. Our business creates security systems that are used by banks. For the back-end team, I serve as the technical lead. Dylan gave a snort. And what is the true meaning of that? Uncle Roberto stepped in and said it meant your sister likely earns more than you will in your lifetime. I was astonished by his comment. At family get-togethers, Roberto had always been the reserved one who watched from the periphery. I had no idea he was tech-savvy. Roberto gave me a subtly amused glance. My nephew also works in technology, he said. He frequently discusses how individuals are transforming digital security. I never made the connection when he ever mentioned your name. What's my name? Confused, I asked. The creator of the Kim Out protocol is Leah Kim. Correct, the one that fixed the 2-factor authentication system's weaknesses. My heart was pounding. That's my job, yes. My father had a wonderful look of bewilderment on his face. Do you mean that Leah is well known in some circles? Roberto answered. According to my nephew, her work is recognized by the nation's top security developers. Dylan got to his feet suddenly. He said, I'm going for more wine. The direction the talk had taken was obviously unpleasant. My mom seemed really perplexed. But you didn't tell us. You didn't inquire. I answered plainly. There was a strange stillness after that. Cousin Rachel, who had been silent the whole night, eventually spoke, but it was no longer the awkward silence of the past. Instead, it was one filled with awareness and difficult realities. Leah, I always knew you would succeed, ever when we were little. I gave her a thankful grin. During those years, she had been the only one who truly noticed me. My dad was clearly uncomfortable as he cleared his throat. We always knew you were intelligent, though. Our only concern was that you were using your computers by yourselves. Dad, I have buddies, calmly I said. A job I adore and good pals. I'm not alone myself. And suddenly, as though the cosmos wanted to make my argument clear, my phone rang. Lisa and the rest of my buddies in New York made the video call. Leah. When I replied, they all yelled at once. How is the reunion with relatives going? They're grinning. The screen was covered in faces, a patchwork of hues and attitudes bound together by sincere love. Fascinating. I turned the camera to show them the quiet family in the room while I answered. Hi there. Leah's relatives. Lisa gave a warm greeting. We wanted to let you know that you have a wonderful woman in your family and wish you a nice Christmas season. Here in New York, we miss her. Lisa had always been the group's extrovert. She went on. Our Leah was recently nominated for the Turing Award for next year. Did you know that? It is comparable to the Nobel Prize in computer science. My dad nearly choked while drinking. What? It's not really important, I said as my cheeks began to flush. This is only a first nomination. Only a suggestion. Lisa gave a theatrical eye roll. Tell them Derek. With that apprehensive motion, my coworker and friend from college adjusted his spectacles. So typical of him. The nomination of Leah is a huge accomplishment. Her contributions to quantum cryptography have transformed the area. Before the age of 40, few developers received this distinction. As if her legs were giving out, I saw my mother slowly collapse into the couch. I placed my phone aside and hurriedly bid farewell to my pals, vowing to call them later. There was an overwhelming quiet in the room. Dylan brought the wine back, evidently having overheard some of the kitchen chat. When he glanced at me, his face had a look of disbelief mixed with something I had never seen before. With grudging respect. Would you pour me some of that wine? I smiled a little as I asked. What did he do for the first time in my life? I inquired without making any disparaging remarks. The remainder of the evening was spent in a separate discourse. I was the target of the inquiries now, not Dylan. What was the specific nature of my work? What was meant by quantum cryptography? Were banks really reliant on my systems? I gave a careful response, breaking out difficult ideas. Observing how each explanation caused my family's eyes to expand. Dylan even paid close attention. However, he feigned a greater interest in his phone. My mother stopped me in the hallway as I was ready to fall asleep. Hold on, Leah. Her voice trailed off as she said, Dylan is welcome to sleep on the sofa. Your old room is yours. I gave a head shake. Mom, I'm all right on the couch. However, we now recognize your significance. She was adamant, and I nearly laughed at how openly she changed her attitude. I said quietly, Mom, I was always important. You simply failed to notice it. She stood in the hallway taking in what I had said, and I left her there. I read my work emails as I was resting on the uncomfortable couch that evening. I received a notice on my phone from a Swiss bank that was considering adopting our protocol. My family would remain unaware of yet another career triumph until it became too significant to overlook. However, I had lost interest. I hadn't come to get their blessing. I had come to confront the demons of the past by closing a chapter, and I had in a sense succeeded. Breakfast the following morning was a bizarre event. Without my request, my father brought me coffee. I was given the final muffin by my mother. Dylan genuinely wanted to know about cybersecurity and trends. You know, he added as he brushed his toast with butter, perhaps you could provide me security advice for my startup. I could, I said, taking a drink of my coffee. What precisely is the nature of your business? Dylan described his platform, which links independent eateries with nearby delivery businesses. It had potential, but it wasn't groundbreaking. He acknowledged that the security approach is really simple. We don't have any money for fancy things. Security is not an optional feature. I advised him that it need to be incorporated right now. I can connect you with a few of my team's younger devs. As a side project, they might be able to assist you. His facial expression was one of relaxation. That'd be fantastic, he remarked. After breakfast, Dylan helped my mother with the dishes, and it was odd to see him so thankful and vulnerable, as if he suddenly recognized me as an equal or even someone to adore. I dried as she washed this time. A little yet important shift. The stillness was broken by her. She said softly, "We never understood what you did." It appeared so ethereal. "Yeah," I said. We could relate to Dylan's accomplishments, thus we were proud of him. Team leader, student leader, those were physical objects. I gave her a nod and let her go on. "However, your buddies contacted yesterday night after your uncle gave them an explanation of your job. I came to the realization that we had been mistaken all along." I stared at her, taken aback by her candor. "I don't think you'll pardon me." Then she went on, using too much power to scrape a clean dish. "I simply want you to know how proud I am of you. Proud but late." I'd always longed to hear those words. Oddly enough, though, I didn't require them as much as I had previously. "Thank you, Mom," I said plainly. My father showed up at the living room door later that day when I was packing to leave for New York. He remarked nonchalantly, "Your mother told me you bought your apartment." I folded a sweatshirt and nodded. "And the prize your pals told you about?" "Does it matter?" I remarked. "Quite, but it's only a preliminary nomination." He gave a nod, handling the data. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something. The little box was clumsily wrapped in rumpled wrapping paper. "We neglected to provide it to you." He held it out to me and said, "This last night." I carefully picked it up and opened it. It was a framed vintage picture. At the school science fair, I was 16 years old and seated in front of a computer. I recalled the day I had created my own pattern recognition program and won second place. None of my relatives had gone. I held on to it. My dad spoke in a voice I couldn't understand. "I've always known that you are unique to me." I was at a loss for words. A late gesture did not erase years of neglect, but I suppose that was a beginning. I eventually said, "Thank you, Dad." Dylan was sneaking a cigarette on the front porch when I finished packing. Similar to our adolescent years. "I had no idea you were still smoking." Placing my luggage on the floor, I remarked, "Only when I'm anxious," he acknowledged. "If Mia found out, she would kill me." For a while, we stood silently thinking about the neighborhood, which was sleepy in the dim winter light. "I was always envious of you." Suddenly, he said, "You know." I gave him a glance. I must have misheard. "I was envious of you." He exhaled a cloud of smoke and repeated, "From an early age, you knew what you desired. I just followed instructions. However, you were the favorite." I indicated the focal point of interest. He gave a shrug. "Leah, freedom isn't always attention. You paved your own way. I simply went down the route they outlined for me. I had never thought of things that way before." Dylan has always been the one who was favored and loved by me, while I fought to be noticed. It never occurred to me that he would feel stuck in his own position. I informed him that it's not too late to choose your own course. With a mortgage and a baby on the way, he grinned sarcastically. "Perhaps. However, I am at least now able to get business advice from my successful sister." Although he spoke in a casual tone, I sensed a sincere respect that had never existed before. Soon later, my cab pulled up. It wasn't as awkward as I thought it would be. My mother gave me a lengthier hug than was required, implying that she would soon return. It sounded genuine. My dad shook my hand and then uncomfortably offered me a quick embrace. With a renewed desire to stay in contact, the aunts, uncles, and cousins bid farewell. I was led to the cab by Dylan. He responded, "Good luck with the nomination." "Really, thanks," I said. "When I return to New York, I will forward your startup's connections to you." I peered out the rear window as the cab sped off. My family gathered and waved on the porch. I never imagined seeing them watching me go and hoped I would come back. It was a peaceful journey back to New York. I took in all that had transpired. The stated, and implicit statements the spectacular and subtle alterations. Rachel's message vibrated on my phone. "You were incredible. You made them unable to speak. When you get home, give me a call. House." The term stuck in my head for a very long time. Instead of being a location to return to Seattle, had been a place to flee. Now, though, it may be both. I was tired but calm when I eventually made it to my Brooklyn flat. I poured myself a glass of wine and left my baggage at the door. My phone rang once more. The Turing Award Committee sent me an email asking for further details about my work. Tomorrow, I would reply. I walked up to the window and stared at the city lights. I thought back to the evening 5 years ago when I first saw these lights from my tiny shared student room. They were beacons of optimism, of limitless possibilities of a future I could create myself back then. They were now my triumphs and my home's lights. My phone rang again. Lisa was the one. "Did you make it through the family get-together?" she inquired. "Seldom," I replied. More than that, as I sipped my wine, I answered. "I believe they spotted me at last." She laughed warmly and said it was about time. "Will you be attending tomorrow's post-Christmas dinner? Derek's renowned risotto is being prepared." Nothing would make me miss it. I hung up and went over some code I had left unfinished before the vacation on my laptop. Everything appeared to be in order. Millions of people's data was protected without their knowledge thanks to the flawless operation of the security system I built. It seemed odd to consider that my unspoken effort had a greater influence on the world than any ostentatious statement or eye-catching title. Perhaps that was the lesson. Not all true power is loud. Like the code I wrote sometimes. It works in the background, organizing the environment in ways that everyone can feel but few can see. Even though my flat was quiet, I didn't feel alone. Like snowflakes, the recollections of the last few days swirled in my head. My mother's uncomfortable embrace, my father's shocked expression, the grudging awe in Dylan's gaze. I also didn't feel like the invisible girl pleading to be noticed for the first time. The lady I had always been was back in me. Powerful, able, excellent. My father gave me a tiny box which I unwrapped. I was taken back in time to that day by the science fair shot. I recalled how thrilling it was to see my software operating flawlessly. The pride. When I received praise for my inventiveness from the top judge. In addition, I recalled how Mr. Alvarez had taken me out for ice cream to celebrate my second-place finish and the vacant spot where my family should have been. In order to demonstrate how much I had changed since then, rather than to remind myself of what I had lost, I put the picture on my bookcase with my degrees and professional honors. A text message vibrated on my cell phone. Dylan was the one. "I discussed what you stated with me. You're correct. I still have time to discover my own way. I appreciate your counsel, little sister." As I read those words, I grinned. Little sister. I was unable to recall the last time he had used that term to refer to me. I responded without teasing. "The contacts for your startup will be delivered tomorrow at any moment." I continued by saying, "Hey, congrats on the baby once more. You'll be a wonderful dad," because I believed it in spite of everything. Dylan wasn't flawless, but he wasn't the antagonist I had been harboring for years. He was only a man caught up in the expectations of others, similar to how I had been imprisoned in invisibility. After thinking about my family, I used to get restless nightmares, but that night I slept soundly. I woke up the next morning feeling more energized and more clear-headed than I had been in a long time. My mother was the surprise sender of the email I got while making coffee. The subject only stated, "Your space." Curious, I opened it. Leah was there for a moment. "We are considering remodeling your previous space. Dylan's office will no longer be there. When you come to visit, we want you to feel welcome." "Mom, what color do you want for the walls?" I was moved by the modest but meaningful gesture and just gazed at the screen. It wasn't a big announcement or a lengthy apology. It was worth more. A recognition of my position within the family. A place set out for me. "Mint green," I said. "That would be pleasant." "Mom, thank you." After that, I included a postscript. "In March, I'll be attending a convention in Seattle. I may remain for a few more days." After sending the email, I stood outside and gazed out the window. Under a bleak winter sky, New York was just starting to awaken. A notice from work sounded on my phone. My suggestion for the new security protocol had been accepted. I spent months working on it. I grinned. Daily struggles and victories persisted in life, but a fundamental shift had occurred. The burden of the neglected child was no longer on me. I had left it behind along with the years' worth of hurt and bitterness. It had nothing to do with my family suddenly appreciating me. That was about my first realizing that and then creating a life that mirrored that reality. The remainder was just unnecessary code, as a programmer would put it. My phone rang once more. It served as a reminder for the 9 a.m. team meeting. It was necessary for the technical lead to be there and ready. After finishing my coffee, I put my laptop away and grabbed my coat. It was time to go back to my favorite job with the people I cared about in the place I had made my home. A neighbor gave me a warm greeting in the elevator. "Leah, have a happy Christmas. How is your family visit going?" I paused to think before responding. "Exposing," finally I said. "Very illuminating." I noticed a new lightness in my steps as I made my way through Brooklyn's streets to the subway station. Above my head, bits of vivid blue were starting to emerge from the gloomy sky. A fresh start? A fresh day. My phone vibrated again in my pocket. Rachel was the one. "What do you know? You should also come for New Year's, in my opinion." When you informed them about your efforts, the expressions on everyone's faces were amazing. Additionally, Uncle Roberto would want to present his nephew, the IT worker, to you. "You're his idol," he says. I grinned. Perhaps I would. Or perhaps I would show Rachel my world by inviting her to New York. In front of me, the choices were endless, similar to unwritten lines of code. While awaiting the train, from the invisible child in Seattle to the esteemed lady in New York, I thought back on the bizarre path my life had taken. I went from forced quiet to my own words, from rejection by family to acknowledgement in the workplace. And now maybe in the direction of a reconciliation I never believed was conceivable. With a mechanical roar, the train pulled me out of my reverie. I walked in as the doors opened, blending with the morning workers. The new security protocol's components were already starting to come together in my thoughts like a challenging yet intriguing puzzle. I did what I did well. I was appreciated for it. And for the first time, I felt that these realities applied to both my personal and professional lives. The train sped forward, thundering through the tunnels, guiding me toward the dawning day and the future I had created for myself. Code line. Through a line of code. A future shaped by all I had accomplished rather than what I needed. And there was my real triumph more than any late familial acknowledgement. When I was packed for my trip to Seattle 3 months later, I got a notification that would forever alter the course of my career. I had been chosen as one of the Turing Award finalists. At the office, my colleagues spontaneously threw a party complete with plastic cups, inexpensive champagne, heartfelt embraces, and a card signed by everybody. "We've always known you were unique." My boss raised his drink and informed me. "It's just taking time for the world to catch on." I contacted my parents that evening to confirm my arrival once I had done packing. "I have some news." After the first welcomes, I informed them. About the nomination and gave a brief explanation of its significance in my line of work. "I have no idea if I will prevail. It's similar to getting an Oscar. However, I made an effort to simplify for computers." The other end of the line was silent for a time. Then I heard the gruff, emotional voice of my father. He remarked, "I always knew you were special, Leah." It wasn't true when you were young. He had never known it, of course, or whether he had detected it. I had never seen him do it. He wanted to believe it now, though. I wanted to allow him to do so. "Thank you, Dad," I said plainly. "Your room is prepared." My mom stepped in. "I cleaned your old desk and gave it a mint green as you requested. While you're here, I thought you may like to work a little." I was more affected by the gesture than I had anticipated. The room wasn't only painted, it was a recognition of my current self. I responded that would be ideal. "On Sunday, Dylan and Mia will join us for supper." My mother went on to say that your Uncle Roberto is adamant that you meet his nephew and they want to show you the ultrasounds of the baby. I grinned. Curious things happen in life. I had vowed not to look back when I fled Seattle 5 years ago. I was on my way back. As a self-assured woman who was acknowledged in her field as the mistress of her fate rather than as the unseen girl who was frantically seeking acceptance. "Then see you tomorrow." I hung up and said goodbye. I surveyed the sleek contemporary spaces of my Brooklyn apartment, the metropolis that never sleeps in the distance. Science fiction literature were piled beside technical ones. All of this served as my home and haven. I had created that space for myself. However, it is possible that I may also begin to feel comfortable in other locations. In the painful but honest talks with my family, in the little reconciliations that were gradually mending old scars in a mint green room in North Seattle. That night, my phone rang one final time. Dylan had sent a message with a picture attached. It displayed a contemporary desk and a tiny workspace with plants. My new office. The message stated, "I'm taking your advice to dream big, yet start small." "Do you believe it will succeed?" I answered. "That's all you need, and it's a terrific start." If my experience taught me anything, it was that even modest beginnings have the power to create great changes. For example, a single line of code may revolutionize a whole system, or an unseen girl can evolve into a woman. It is impossible to overlook. I went to bed after turning out the lights in my apartment so that I may dream about the voyage that lay ahead. Not just the actual travel to Seattle, but also the ongoing inward quest for forgiveness, acceptance, and healing. Because it was the real triumph in the end, I was willing to accept the acceptance that I had long sought, even though I no longer needed it. Leah Kim is my name. I'm 31 years old, and after a long period of evasion, I'm now learning how to come back. Not as I used to be, but as the woman I've grown into. A lady who doesn't have to hide behind code and screens anymore. A lady who gradually learns to be visible to herself as well as to others.